We hear this all the time.
There are so many updates and tons of community work happening. It's hard to keep up. How do I follow it all?
Here is your answer. Listen to the Gutenberg Changelog. Well, hello and welcome to our 10th episode of the Gutenberg Changelog. Today's episode is again fully packed with the first 1,000 downloads, giving cause to celebrate and ruminate. We'll talk about the many changes that came to the block editor with WordPress 5.3 release earlier this week. Also this week, Gutenberg 6.9 was released with yet more features, enhancements, and experiments. We also talk about the first discussion on collaborative and editing. I'm Birgit Pollyhart, curator of Gutenberg Times, and I'm here with my co-host, Mark Urain, designer at Automatic and core contributor to WordPress. Boy, it's been a busy week. How are you today, Mark?
Hey, Birgit. I am wonderful and tired. I've been spending some time in the WordPress.org forums this week, trying to just help out where I can with anybody's experiences upgrading to WordPress 5.3. And I've also spent some time in the Gutenberg reviews. So, yeah, it's quite adventurous in there.
Well, you do God's work there, and all the support people do. And that's actually also part of our one question. Mark, I found this quote. Yeah, I don't know where it was. I think it was an editor meeting or something like that. Make sure that you update Gutenberg plugin to 6.5 first before you update WordPress 5.3. It was a little bit out of context. Do you have any more insights?
So, from a personal experience, I had a site running an older version of Gutenberg, and the server or the host updated my WordPress to 5.3 automatically for me, which is great. But WordPress 5.3, to run Gutenberg, you need to have 6.5 or later of that plugin version. I did not, and it brought down my site. So I ran into some trouble. After some investigation, I realized there was an issue about it in Gutenberg already, and some things are being recorded on that and figured out. But luckily, with WordPress 5.3 was this new admin email that goes out when your site crashes, and helped me out a lot because it provided me a link with the plugins deactivated. I was able to go in, remove the old version of Gutenberg, and reinstall it, and it was perfect with 5.3. Ran smoothly. So it was really a test of the software, and everything came through. I was thrilled to see it work so well.
Right. And it's awesome that you find that out and that you got help from the new features that came in earlier in WordPress. So earlier this week, we celebrated the first 1,000 downloads.
Yeah.
Gutenberg Changelog podcast episodes.
Excellent.
Huge thank you to our listeners, and this is very encouraging. Thank you so much. I also want to introduce you to our team. If you listen to our 0 episode, we mentioned Homer Gaines, who gave us permission to use his music. And I want to give him another shout out now that we have so many more listeners. Homer Gaines is a developer by day and maker of music by night. He has been producing music and scores for independent film projects since the early 90s. He finds inspiration in many genres, and his music is kinematic with an ambient lo-fi mix of rhythmic undertones and driving beats that flood the environment and become the backdrop for every mood. Gutenberg Changelog title music is called More Free Time, and it's off the album Movement. More free time. Can't we all have that?
Yes. Thank you, Homer, for that music and constantly reminding us that we need more free time.
And up until episode number 4, I did all the editing and publishing, but when the time between recording and publishing was almost 2 weeks, it was time to find an editor. So for episode number 5, Sandy Reed, she is a former radio talk show producer, reviewed our episodes and sound quality as well as content, and she gave us a ton of additional tips. She now edits and publishes our episodes, and there are weeks when the time from recording to publishing is 1 day now. We hope to make this a reality this week again. just a shout out to Homer Gaines and Sandy Reed.
Thank you, Sandy. Excellent work.
So we got WordPress 5.3 released.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I love it.
This introduces so many improvements to Gutenberg and the editor, the block editor in WordPress now. And I'm so excited that people on 5.3, even without the plugin, are getting to experience the Gutenberg that was really meant to be like this refined experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brian Jackson from Kinsta actually wrote an article regarding the new features brought into the editor. We have a link in the show notes, but I'd love to talk about a few of the things that are improved. And in there now, we have the group block is one of them. That's a big one. A lot of people appreciate this and love that you can group content or other blocks together now and throw in a background color to kind of separate it out from the front end visuals. So that's been a popular block. We also have the block appender, which is included in the group and the columns blocks. So this helps basically gives you a hot point to click on to add a block to these other blocks. It makes it more usable, basically. Another block that's been improved is the columns block. The first iteration was a bit rudimentary, but now it's a lot better. There's like a placeholder screen so you can select what sort of column layout you'd like, and that's an improvement. Birgit, what else do we have?
My favorite block also got a lot of iterations. That's the cover block. That got a focal point for the background image. Also solid background color as an alternative to a background image. Now you can also add any block to the cover block. And so most of the blocks that we just mentioned are all nested blocks. And then there was also the table block, which was very, very basic in the 5.0 version. In the 5.3 version, it supports now text alignments in columns. So you can have one column left aligned, one center aligned, and the other one right aligned. There are table headers and footers, and you can add background colors to your table blocks. It still needs a lot of work, but I think we're moving forward quite dramatically.
Yeah.
What was also introduced since 5.2 came out was the block navigation mode, which is a feature that allows you to use the keyboard to navigate from block to block. So the tab key or the arrow key gets you from block to block. And with enter and escape, you can go in and out of block editing, which is helpful for those that are not using a mouse on a screen tab to navigate. There was also an improvement that came out of the accessibility audit to make that navigate better. Yeah,
that one is a lifesaver for keyboard users. That is fantastic, because before, when you had to tab through every block control, it would take forever to get through the block just to get to the next block. Now, piece of cake.
Yeah. I think to put an image in, previously you had to, and only do it with keyboard, it was 47 taps necessary to actually successfully add an image to it. And yeah, so this definitely major improvement. What else, Mark?
So we've got motion now, which is a cool little feature there. When you're moving blocks around, there's a little animation that happens and things kind of move out of the way when you drop another block into another area. And of course, there's CSS support for no motion for people who have that turned off in their browsers. Let's see, we've got gallery block improvements. You can move and sort images within the gallery right there in the editor. You can add captions to all the images. There is also the latest post block. It's one of the early widget blocks that were widgets that were converted to blocks. It's experienced a few enhancements now. So it uses settings for categories and tags, with content or without content, with the date or the author or not. So some other improvements there. Looks like we're still missing the featured images, but I know that's being worked on for that block specifically.
Oh, good to hear, because I'm still missing that personally quite a bit. Because it would be such a visually more.
It would really be nice.
Yeah, and when you kind of be able to spread it out over the full width, then you can give them a little breathing room as well. What's also in 5.3 is the typewriter experience. that is something that Matt Mulvick also demonstrated in his State of the Word at WordCamp US 2 weeks ago. And it keeps the cursor in the middle of the screen, or the line where you are, and when you're typing, so the content doesn't shift with each new line. It's kind of very set there, like a typewriter would be, where the paper goes through, but the line doesn't change. But only for those who actually know how a typewriter works.
I know. I used a typewriter before.
Me too. Yeah, I typed my resume on a typewriter after school, but then 4 years later, I had my first computer to do my thesis. So I really, that was the jump where I jumped the shark.
Can you believe that, Birgit? Like, we are from an age where we remember a time when there were no computers.
Yeah, barely though.
My children, they have no concept of that. They have had a computer in the house since they've been born.
Yeah, when we watch old movies, just a little tangent, you see somebody using a rotator phone from the kitchen, and then there's this long line into the closet. You always crack up, like, don't they have cell phones? So what's also in 5.3 is an enhancement on the separator block. And a separator, it sounds like something very basic, but it's such a great tool to control the space between blocks and between the different sections of your post. And now you can also change the color of the separator. And there are 2 styles in there where you have a dotted line, and you can have it full width or only half the width. So it's a great block for layout. The list block also got some improvement, but there's a lot of work to be done. You can do indent, outdent shortcuts. You can start the value on a different number, and you can also reverse the order. And those things are kind of edge things, but they really help when you have a headline and then the numbers you want to kind of continue from the previous block. So it's really interesting to use.
Yeah, that list block, it's getting some improvements, but I would love to be able to navigate that whole thing just with the keyboard, very simply using tabs and, to indent lists and stuff. I always struggle with that one, but we're getting there.
We're getting there, yeah, but it still only does text, so you can't do any media. That's why changing the value of things might help with that.
All right. So we've also got a few other improvements in 5.3 with the button block. It supports a link target now and various border radiuses that can be adjusted on the buttons. Let's see, the inserter help panel, or the block library, is another name for this. We call it a help panel now. So when you hover over a block, you're able to read a little bit about it and maybe even preview it before you add it to your document. So you kind of learn a little bit prior to using it. And we've also introduced snack bar notices. This is kind of little notifications that happen in the bottom left-hand corner of the editor, upon saving the document or publishing or some of the other actions that a user might take.
Yeah, when the old editor had the notification on top and the block editor has them on the bottom now. I think the snack bar notices are very helpful for plugin authors who want to inform their users about things. I also did some testing. I had in my brain back that the button now has gradients, but this one doesn't. It came one Gutenberg plugin version after the one that was merged. If you want to have gradients on your button, and I know a lot of people want to have gradients, you need to install the Gutenberg plugin. Speaking of which, so in 5.3, Gutenberg version 6.4 was the last one that was merged. In between the beta version and the release candidate and the release, there were 5 more releases of Gutenberg. And this week's Gutenberg release had one feature that was requested since the beginning of time, and that is being able to change the image title attribute in the image block. It finally landed. So if you need that, get your Gutenberg 6.9. And there's also, we had about 3 enhancements of it. One is a list of default available gradients. So there are certain pattern and palettes that are available for gradients. And I think the gradients are also available for other blocks now, like the cover block. And I'm not sure about the median text, but so it's not only the button block that has gradients.
Yeah.
But that was already in 6.8. I think we talked about it last week on our show about it. And then there's an immediate inserter block. So there is a feature now that if you have a pattern or a nested block and there's only one block allowed, that block will be automatically added instead of having to go to the additional step to adding that particular block.
It saves a step there. Yeah.
So, and then there were also 9 bug fixes, of which I only kind of point out 3 of them. And one is that the pull quote has been fixed with the color palettes for the pull quote have been fixed, and now those are working right. And then also fixed the columns left and right full width margins. So you actually could access the columns block when it was in a full width. That was a little buggy there, but that is fixed now. And there are also default image sizes used for the feature image displayed by the editor. All very helpful.
Yeah. And then we had about 4 different experiments kind of included here. One having to do with block content areas, which we know is a precursor to full site editing. So kind of loading in block templates from themes. That support was added now. Still very rough or very technical right now. We need to work on interfaces in the front so people can use some of this stuff, but a lot of updates for the navigation block have been included, and this can be turned on, of course, in the experiments page in the plugin. And you have various things like adding a block placeholder now, default front end styles, rich text for navigation menu item, a block navigator is added to the block, so you can kind of jump through the nested blocks within the navigation block using the popover navigator. Yeah, all sorts of things. Let's see, there was another experiment like the responsive block control component was added, which is a big one, because this one kind of opens and paves the way for responsive controls for all the blocks, essentially, which is a big deal. And by the way, I see that pop up in the Gutenberg reviews all the time now that I'm in there this week. Everybody wants more responsive controls, they say. So we're working on it, everybody. We're working on it. And API for block patterns as well has been introduced. So awesome. Let's see, 4 different API improvements. Several of them looks like just kind of marking them as stable and making sure that developers know they're ready for use. Some of them, those include like the custom gradient presets, async mode, the media upload, and this WP environment JSON file as well, JSON config file support. So yeah, you're good. What else? Yeah,
it sounds like the navigation block might actually come out of experimental and land in the 7.0. What do you think? Another 2 weeks?
Very possible. Very possible. It's going to be fun to have that included. I mean, our goal is definitely to have that part of the plugin before the end of the year. So as a valid, strong, good block that can be used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the theme support for the block templates, I think theme authors will be really jumping on that because they have been waiting for it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And as well as the theme support for the gradients, which is now in that version, as you mentioned. There were a few various things, which is kind of the kitchen drawer of a release note, where everything that didn't fit in our different categories is listed.
Various.
So the first one that I highlight there is that it was refactored the way HTML was escaped in the rich text component. I think that helps quite a bit with special characters. The team also refactored and simplified the block margins CSS for the editor, and then has updated some of the components like the external link, the base control, and the form token field. They are now using the visually hidden component for screen reader text. That's another accessibility feature or refactoring there. Then quite a few more components have now storyboards, and we list them in the show notes, but that's the Gutenberg testing ground that where you can test every of those components separately from your own development.
Yeah, it's a great place where you can visually see the component. You can see what it's actually doing, look at the code. So as long as we keep adding those components to that storybook, like people are able to see all the various ones, which is great.
Yeah, and the examples is really good. So block directory was something that was aimed for 5.3, but it didn't really make it. And now they refactored the block directory search to insert blocks from the repository, plugin repository, via an inserter plugin. So it can be tested outside of a WordPress update. So those were the various things. There was also some string concatenation fix for the verse and some translator strings, and then some end-to-end testing changes. Documentation was updates on the storybook feature for the developers, and also some typos and fixes. And yeah, speaking of documentation, we actually never talk about end user documentation because it's still abysmally 5.0 kind of there. But on Contributor Day and WordCamp US, I volunteered to be the coordinator, the rep for the end user documentation to bring it up to 5.3. It's still a few months out, but we started the Trello board so we can identify what all needs to change, so we can then ask other people to maybe take on some of the documentation updates. That would be
who should people contact to get involved with that?
So it's all in Docs. That's the channel where a lot of things is discussed. But if you want to send me, ping me on Twitter at BPH, or on Slack at BPH in a private message, yeah, I can set you up with and kind of connect you with all the things that you could do. So the process is all right, because I need to kind of think about standards, or we need to be about standards and how to follow through. How do we do the screenshots? Right now, it's the ideas. Should I use the 2020 theme, or should I use a white background? That's kind of, that's a toss-up. I'm looking at some of the documentation other people wrote because they used the 2020, and I like the 2020 very much, but for documentation, having that beige background on the white toolbar, it's kind of, so I'm kind of, yeah, that's...
Yeah, for documentation, it makes sense to have that white background, because something like that is, well, I was going to say it's not going to go out of date, but documentation always goes out of date eventually. So never mind. But I do like the white background too, just for documentation.
I saw that alternative and I said, yeah. But if you agree with me and you're the design expert.
Yes, we made an executive decision for the community.
I like that executive decision. Podcast. What your rain said, and that's what I'm going to do. Oh. It's your fault, man.
And you know what, for our listeners, you're not making a decision here, but I want to say, like, documentation is a great place for first-time contributors to get involved. It's an excellent way for you to learn more about the software, to help educate others on the software, and to contribute.
Well, thank you for that. So, and the last part of we have still a few things that are in active development that we want you to know about. Mark, what did you bring?
Yeah, there's a recent post from Mel Choi-Swan. She posted on the Make Design blog about block patterns and block layouts. And she goes into she organizes the terminology really well, which is something that we've kind of been tripping around in our Slack channels. And so Mel does a good job to kind of just lay it out. This is kind of what a block is, this is what a pattern is, and this is what a layout is. And this is how they work together. And why this is important is because we're trying to figure this out in Gutenberg, in the software, and trying to understand how themes might register, block layouts or plugins or whatever, and how these things really work together on the page. Basically, what it comes down to is the block is really the molecule, the basic essence of Gutenberg. And then when you get a few together, that creates a block pattern. So say maybe like a testimonial or page, or has a pattern of how testimonials are shown, or you have the pricing plan page that gives you columns and stuff. So that's a pattern, right? But then you might have a layout which encompasses a whole page. So you have a layout of the section on top is like a little about section. Then you have your team members or another pattern that shows their faces or who they are. And that's another section, right? Those are various block patterns that have been included into one big layout. So that's as complicated as that sound. Mel puts it much more cleaner than I did in her post. So please check out that. We've got the link in the show notes. What else do we have, Birgit?
Yeah, and I stumbled upon the collaborative editing. Although it's phase 3, there seems to be some discussion flaring up. It's been out there and explorations were in full swing, but at the moment, only one user can edit a post or page at the same time. If another user wants to access that page, it's either locked or the first one will be kicked out. But most of the time, there are more than one person involved in producing a story. So it's a multiple reporters, photo editors, copy editors, producers. So that's kind of the problem. And that problem is not trivial to solve. And Sophia and Gioka and Jeff Sisson, they work for the New York Times. They wrote an article about how they built the collaborative editing feature for their CMS. That's a proprietary CMS, but Greg Cholkowski suggested to read that article to get up to speed on the issues and on the decisions that have to be made. And for the block editor, the earliest I found there was an early issue in the GitHub already started back in 2017.
2017?
Yes,
Whoa.
it was kind of right at the beginning. But about 3 weeks ago, Enrique Piqueras picked it up again in his draft pull request. And he did the first kind of explanations on how he approaches it. He also created a video so you can see it in action. And in the video, you see 2 browser windows. One is an incognito window. Both are logged in, both load the edit post screen for the same post. And you see the changes made in one window are magically updated in the other window. And its headings changes, image changes, text changes. It looks magical. And of course, it's just a proof of concept right now. But it's definitely something you want to check out if that's something that you are interested in, to make sure that your concerns and your ideas are actually addressed. So that is the time to jump in and be a collaborator on that.
Just to throw a wrench into the cogs, like this is going to be really interesting to see how collaborative editing works in a full site editing experience. Like if you imagine that, like I've been thinking of collaborative editing similarly to how Google Docs does it, right? Where you're in a document and you leave comments and suggestions and there's multiple people in there, but that's one document. Imagine editing a site with a header and footer and sidebar and blocks all over the place and allowing collaborative editing into that experience.
It's a whole new level there of complexity.
Wow.
It's not, we don't do things because it's easy.
Yeah. After we nail that, we're going to be landing on Mars probably, right? Like that's the next step, I think.
So, and we are at the end of our show for today, Friday, November 15th. And as always, the show notes will be published on gutenbergtimes.com/podcast. And if you have any questions and suggestions or news that you want us to include, send them to changelog@gutenbergtimes.com. Changelog@gutenbergtimes.com. Thank you all for listening. Goodbye until the next time.
Yes, thank you, listeners. Birgit, it was wonderful talking with you today.
Same here, Mark. Same here. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.